Okay, for the first question, it asks what percentage of this rectangle is shaded. To be able to answer that, I need to first know how many total boxes there are in this rectangle. So I count. It looks like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boxes in this direction. And then in this direction, 5 boxes. So multiply 8 times 5 and 40 boxes total. So now I need to figure out how many of them are shaded. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This right there is one box, that's 9. This together, these two halves is another box, that's 10. These two pieces make a full box, 11, 12, 13, 14. So it looks like I have 14 boxes out of 40 total. Simplified, that's the same as 7 out of 20. And since I'm trying to find a percentage, I'd like to know how many out of 100. So I noticed that 20 times 5 would equal 100. So 7 times 5 is 35. So this answer is 35% of the boxes are shaded. Alright, second problem. In the picture, 3/10 of a rectangle is shaded. Draw the whole rectangle. So I actually count let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes. So this 3 out of 10 is a little bit confusing. One thing I remember is that fractions have many names. So 3 out of 10 is actually the same as 6 out of 20. So I think the rectangle that I'm looking for must be 20 boxes. So I realize if a rectangle has one side of 4 and another side of 5 for the lengths, that will be a rectangle that has 20 boxes total. Alright, this problem says shade in 25% of this rectangle. So 25% is the same as 1/4. So I'm going to divide this up into this rectangle up into 4 equal pieces. And I will shade 1/4 of it. Now it says to shade in 2/5 of the remaining unshaded part. So I'm going to erase a couple lines so I can see the remaining part a little more clearly. And I'm supposed to shade in 2/5 of that. Well, I notice that it divides into 5 pieces pretty easily. Just like this. And so shading in 2/5 of those. And then it wants to know what is the fraction of the squares that are still unshaded, so I'll count them. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 that are still unshaded. 18 out of, so to find the total, how many in this direction? Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then 5 in this direction. So similar to the rectangle in problem number 1, 18 out of 40. And so that could be my answer, but I see that it can be written in a simpler way. So I always want to choose the simpler way. 9 out of 20. Alright, this one. Here's a recipe for salt dough. It makes 6 pounds of salt dough. Complete the table with the correct amounts for each number of pounds. So I think I'm going to start out with 3 pounds because that's half of 6 pounds, and that seems like an easy number to figure out. So half of 6 would be 3. Half of 9 would be 4.5. Half of 1 would be 1/2. And half of 1 would also be 1/2. These are going to be the same numbers, even though the units will be different. The column for food coloring is tablespoons. The column for salt is cups. Now I think it's going to be pretty easy to find 9, because if I know how much it takes to make 3 pounds and how much it takes to make 6 pounds, I can just add those together to find the amount for 9 pounds. So starting with the flour column, 3 plus 6 is 9. 4.5 plus 9 is 13 and 1/2. 1 plus 1/2 is 1.5. And once again, 1.5. Okay, now I need to figure out 1 and 2. I think the next easiest one is going to be 1 pound, the first row. So I'm going to start out by finding the flour. So I'm going to take this number right here. This is how much it is for 3 people, so I'm just going to divide that by 3 and find out that it's just 1 cup of flour to get a pound of salt dough. Next I'm going to look at the water. It's 4.5, and I need to divide that by 3. That could be a little bit tricky. I think I'm going to draw a picture to help me see that. So I have 4.5. That half is a little big. It should be only half of the other ones. And I want to divide that up between 3 people. So it looks like each person is going to get a whole, but then there's still going to be some left over. It looks like 1.5 left over. So what I'll do is just cut that in half, and then each person also gets a half. So if I divide up 4.5 between 3 people, each person is going to have 1.5. So it looks like 1.5 cups of water. Next thing, for the food coloring for 1 person, I could divide this by 3, but I also notice I could divide this by 6, because 1 tablespoon is enough for 6 people. So dividing by 6 is pretty easy when the number is 1. It's just 1/6. And then it'll be the same thing for this column, 1/6. Now I need to find out how much it is for 2 people. So that's going to be pretty easy. I'll just double the amount for 1. Sorry, I said 2 people, 2 pounds. I'll just double the amount for 1. So let's go through and double. We double 1 and we get 2. If we double 1.5, 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3. 1/6 plus 1/6 is 2/6. There's a simpler way to write that though, 1/3. And this column is the same. Alright, for this problem, Joaquin dropped a bouncy ball from a height of 20 inches and it bounced up 14 inches. He then dropped the ball from a height of 30 inches and it bounced up 21 inches. How high do you predict that the ball will bounce if it is dropped from 45 inches? So I'm going to try and figure out what percentage or what fraction this thing is bouncing up. It looks like it's bouncing up more than 50%, because if I look at 20, I see that the ball is bouncing up 14, and 50% would have been 10, so it's bouncing up more than 50%. So I'm going to figure out what fraction. So it's bouncing up 14 out of 20 inches, which is the same as 7 out of 10 inches, and which is the same as 70 out of 100, and that's the same as 70%. So it looks like that ball bounced up 70%. Let me look at the next one that was dropped from 30 and bounced up 21 inches. So that one bounced up 21 out of 30 inches. That's the same as 7/10. And I just figured out that 7/10 back here is the same as 70%. So that's going to be equal also to 70%. So it kind of looks like there's this pattern that the ball bounces up by 70%. So I just need to figure out how much it's going to bounce up for 45 inches. So let's try that. So basically 45 inches, what's 70% of that? So there's the question. For this one, I think it's probably going to be easiest to figure out what 10% is. 10% is just 4.5. It's dividing by 10, which means you just move the decimal back. And then 70% is going to be 7 of those. So I'll just do 4.5 times 7. 5 times 7 is 35. Carry the 3. 4 times 7 is 28. Plus that 3 is 31.5. So it looks like it'll bounce up 31.5 inches. Alright, for the last one, Jerry mixed 5 cups of yellow paint with 7 cups of red paint to get 12 cups of orange paint. That was only enough to paint 3 walls of the room. He needs 3 more cups of orange paint to finish the job. How much yellow and how much red should he mix to make 3 cups? Well, if 5 cups of yellow plus 7 cups red equals 12 cups orange, then if you just halved all of those, then you would get the recipe for making, oops, going to use fractions, those are easier. You would get the recipe for making 6 cups, 2.5 yellow plus 3.5 red equals 6 orange. And then if you just half that again, you'll find out how much to make 3 cups of orange paint, which is exactly what you want. So let's half this again. A half of 2 is 1, and a half of a half is 1/4. Yellow. And then for the red, 3.5. Let's see, I'm going to do that in 2 parts, because if I take the 3 in half, I get 1.5, and then half of a half is 1/4. So altogether, that's 1 3/4, and that's going to add up to 3 orange. So it looks like 1 1/4 cups of yellow, 1 3/4 cups of red. And one way to check it is if you just add 1 1/4 plus 1 3/4, that equals 3.